Because of the airiness of it, the mutable airiness, I feel like these are going to be things, the growth is fleeting. What's up, friends? Welcome back. My name is Deja. I'm a traditional astrologer, and in today's video, we're going to be talking all about Jupiter in Gemini. The planet of growth, expansion, opportunity, luck, optimism, enlightenment, all that jazz is leaving the fixed earth sign of Taurus and has moved into the mutable air sign of Gemini. So Jupiter moved into Gemini this past Saturday, May 25th, 2024, and is going to hang out there for about a year until Monday, June 9th, 2025. So it's about a year's worth of time of Jupiter in Gemini, and it should be quite interesting. The last time Jupiter was in Gemini was around the spring of 2012 through the spring of 2013. So I would just think back to what was going on, think back to that time, think about what was going on in your life, pull up your birth chart as always, check to see what house Gemini falls in for you, and maybe there are some things having to do with opportunity, growth, more opportunities brought to that area of your life, more like social connections brought to that area of your life. Maybe it was different back then. There were some other things going on in the sky, so this time around will be a little bit different. But this is the first time that Jupiter is making its way through this area of our lives for the first time in 12 years. So it's a good recap. First, let's nail down Jupiter and Jupiter's significations within itself, and then we'll tap into Gemini as a sign, and then we'll also talk about Jupiter's time in Gemini and whether or not Jupiter enjoys that and some other things. First off, Jupiter is a planet of growth, expansion, blessings, all the good stuff. Jupiter likes to accumulate. Jupiter also will make things bigger and say yes and affirm things. Jupiter enlightens us by providing us with truth and wisdom. Mercury and Jupiter are they're two sides of the same coin in the sense that they're both trying to understand something. And I just think about how Mercury traditionally rules Gemini and Virgo, and Jupiter traditionally rules Sag and Pisces. So if we just think about the difference between those four signs, it's really interesting because I feel like Jupiter and Virgo are really interested in understanding information, and like the facts and the details, and trying to make systems of connection and systems of information sharing. Whereas Sag and Pisces, their information is like, I went to the mountaintop and I consulted with this guru and he told me all these things about myself, and he told me all these things about like the world and the way the world works, and like how our faith can be restored in society, X, Y, and Z. The scale of Jupiter is way bigger than Mercury. Mercury is like the tininess, the tiny details, whereas Jupiter is like the big overarching, the big overarching theory of, like, if you think about, if anyone has written a research paper, if you're an undergrad or even if you're in high school and stuff like that, in grad school, I feel like the thesis is Jupiter, and all of the facts and the supporting evidence is Mercury. Jupiter is the overarching big thing that you're trying to convey, whereas Mercury is all of the citations, the quotes, the research, the evidence that you need to provide in order to support your thesis, support your theory, something like that. So Jupiter says yes, Jupiter affirms things, Jupiter enlightens us, but Jupiter is detriment in Gemini, so it kind of like makes things a little funky. Enlightenment, blessings, expansion, and opportunity. In my opinion, I don't think those things are going to stick around like they would, especially with Jupiter and Taurus. I think the contrast between Jupiter and Taurus and Jupiter and Gemini is going to be so interesting to witness and live through, because Jupiter and Taurus was like, all right, the opportunity and the growth that I'm bringing to this area of life has to be stuff that sticks. The resources that Jupiter was provided in Gemini were resources that are of a fixed earth sign ruled by Venus. So there were things having to do with consistency, stability, a stable sense of like connection, and like making sure that you have the resources that you need, trying to find a way to make sure that those things are not going anywhere. But going from a fixed earth sign that's very tangible, very stable, to a mutable air sign is going to be so wild, because mutable signs within themselves are very like, it's both and. All of the mutable signs are dual-bodied signs. They all, in some degree, combine or work with two things. Like Gemini is even just think about the symbolism, just the symbols of all of them. Gemini is the twins. Two people coming from one. I don't know how that works. That science works. Two people separating that look the same or that have similar DNA, and they're split up into two. Virgo, I feel like, is, what is it, the virgin or whatever? I feel like there's kind of like this way Virgo will try to use like I actually don't know. We're not gonna talk about Virgo right now, but Sagittarius is the bow and the arrow, the centaur, half man, half horse, and a bow and an arrow. Pisces is the two fish. Like there's this symbolism of two. I actually have not thought about Virgo that much. So that's something to dig into, but they're all traditionally considered dual body signs. They're both and. In horary astrology, some immutable significations mean that you start out, like if you're going on like a trip or something, if you have like immutable on the ascendant and you start a trip, you may begin in one path or like in one mode of transportation, but then you have to make a change halfway through the trip. What we start with is not going to be what we end with. Whereas like in the fixed signs, what we start with is what we're ending with. We have the same goal in mind. The goal doesn't change. But in mutable signs, the goals change. There's a lot more room for flexibility with the mutable signs and adjustments, and things just not always, they're just always, there's kind of wishy-washy. It's not always gonna like stay exactly the same, which can be really nice to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's gonna be interesting because one, Jupiter already likes being in mutable signs, like Sag and Pisces. So it's not that energy of being neither here nor there or being both places at the same time is not. Understanding both perspectives at the same time is not something that Jupiter is unfamiliar with. They're all good at like accepting, seeing all the perspectives, seeing all the sides of a thing. That's going to be really interesting. But back to Jupiter being detriment in Gemini, familiar with the both and familiar with the needing to be flexible, but it's still Jupiter in detriment. Jupiter will be in Mercury's domain. And so whatever Mercury is doing in the sky, that is going to add flavor to and give us more nuance as to what's happening with Jupiter in Gemini. So every time Mercury is stationing retrograde, stationing direct, doing all that stuff, that's going to be important for the Jupiter in Gemini transit. But let's go back to detriment. So when a planet is in detriment or fall, that means that if we think about it, if we come at it from the angle of resources, when planets are in detriment and fall, they do not have the resources to have a full sense of agency and autonomy over the choices and the actions that they're taking while they are in said sign. So Jupiter in Gemini doesn't have all the resources to be Jupiter. The resources that Jupiter is given are mercurial resources having to do with connection, mental connection, communication, sharing information to some degree, technology, being curious, being more perceptive, also kind of getting into like some really funky, hidden, obscured areas of life in order to get information, trying to share information out into the world. And I just think of Hermes in Greek mythology, and his job was to literally fly around. He was able to float through and to navigate all of these different realms. So it's going to be really interesting to get wisdom from like obscure, hidden places, because Mercury can be kind of deceitful, kind of sneaky. If it's like bad deceit or trickery that's like malefic trickery, then there's going to be like Mars or Saturn are going to be involved. So like as time goes on, we'll analyze that, but that's just something to look out for. And I think it's really going to be interesting considering how Mercury is the trickster and likes to play tricks on us. Jupiter doesn't really like that. Jupiter is not interested in making tricks, not interested in getting caught lacking. So I think it's going to be really interesting to be like, oh my God, like I believed you. I thought you were telling me the truth, but you weren't. And I think it's going to be kind of a letdown. Yeah, Jupiter doesn't have the resources of just like having faith blindly and just being like, I'm just optimistic about this day. Things are going to be great. I don't know how, but things are going to be great. That's Jupiter to me. Jupiter doesn't have access to that faith-giving, big blessings sort of energy that he normally likes to vibe with. Back to Gemini being a mutable air sign. Let's analyze Gemini. Gemini is a mutable air sign. We talked about the mutableness of Gemini, about how it's like, you know, both and seeing things from a different perspective, able to kind of like see one thing, pull it apart, see one thing, and then see all the sides of it, being able to like connect with people from all different walks of life, regardless of your opinion of them. Like, I think of Mercurials. Mercurials are so funny because they will dislike someone and still be able to have a conversation with them. And I just think it's so funny. They crack me up. Gemini being an air sign. The air signs are up in the clouds. They're up in the air. Mutable, it's air that isn't contained. It's air that's always kind of in flux and flows. Sometimes it's like contained, sometimes it's not. Air signs, it's difficult to keep them pinned down, but they are interested in more social and like mental connections with other people. So, and I also think, especially for the fire risings out there, the Aries, Leo, and Sag risings, Jupiter and Gemini is going to be transiting our 3rd, 7th, and 11th houses. Leo rising, it's going to be going through your 11th house of hopes, wishes, social gatherings, your audience, your friends. Aries risings, it's our 3rd house of communication, our neighborhood, short distance travel, siblings and sibling-like relationships. Sag risings, it's your 7th house of partnerships, romantic partnerships, serious like contractual partnerships and obligations and stuff like that. If you have clients or something like that, if you're a therapist or an astrologer, or if you just have a client base, that is a 7th house thing. But it's also like open enemies. So Sag risings, watch out for that. But nevertheless, I think it could be interesting for us fire signs. There may be a lot more opportunity for us to make new friends and to expand our social network. That's a little tidbit out there for my fire signs, because I love you guys. But anyway, the issue with Jupiter and Gemini, in my opinion, is in these airy places, there is a lack of connection to Earth. There is a lack of something to keep us grounded, to keep us tethered to something, to keep a sense of stability. That's the only thing that worries me. Not worries me, but that's the only thing that I would consider, I would recommend to watch out for, is just the growth and the opportunities that Jupiter and Gemini are going to present are not going to be opportunities that are here to last for the rest of our lives, or even for the next like 5 years. Because of the airiness of it, the mutable airiness, I feel like these are going to be things, the growth is fleeting. I think about if you plant a seed, if you put a seed on the ground and you don't put it in the soil, you don't root it to something, it's just going to blow away in the wind. And like, yeah, sure, you were given a seed, but like, you can't really do anything with it. Like, I don't know. I even think about Jupiter and Sag and Sagittarius. It's fire. Fire needs to be connected to something in order for it to burn. Fire doesn't just burn in the middle of the air. And so, I mean, there's like the sparks and stuff like that, but those sparks don't last. But regardless, and even Jupiter in water signs can really contribute to a sense of like fertility and growth and connection. But the air signs, it's not as rooted, it's not as grounded. So sure, these opportunities may be presenting ourselves. Maybe you get, if you're Virgo rising, you get more work opportunities. I'm also curious about Virgo risings, if it's more so like your partner is getting work opportunities, because Virgo risings have Jupiter ruling the 7th, and then it'll be that 7th house ruler in the 10th. So maybe like, or like your Virgo risings, if you have partners, maybe it doesn't just have to be romantic partners. If you have, again, clients or something like that, people that you work closely with, maybe they, to some degree, are put into a more visible role, or they are kind of, there's more activity happening within their lives. There's more activity with them just because it's Jupiter transiting through an angular house. That's Virgo rising. Who's the opposite of that? Pisces rising will have Jupiter and Gemini going through their 4th house of home. So maybe there are opportunities for expansion in your home, different opportunities for you to move somewhere else, for you to have 2 places of housing. You know what I mean? But maybe it's not super stable. This is only like a temporary opportunity that you're taking advantage of, and this isn't like you're not buying a house. If you do buy that house, maybe you're selling it. Your plans are to sell it in a couple of years. And Sag rising in the 4th. Oh, but then it would be, or no, that's Pisces rising. Pisces in your chart ruler would be in detriment. Yeah, that's still going to be uncomfortable though, because it's your chart ruler in detriment. This Jupiter transit is going to be the most active. And when I say active, I mean like there's just going to be a lot going on, primarily good and bad. Primarily for the mutable risings. So Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, Sag risings. If that is your ascendant sign, this Jupiter transit is going to be going through an angular house. So it may be your 1st house of self for the Gemini risings out there. There's a lot of like opportunity for growth and expansion within yourself. Maybe you're like rethinking your wisdom and your faith and like where you're kind of getting those things from. How can you kind of be more inspired and be more optimistic in this world? And that's really going to like impact your whole entire life. Virgo risings, as I said, it's going through your 10th house. Pisces risings, it's going through your 4th house. Sag risings, it's going through your 7th. And all of these places are very active, very potent places. So heightened activity for certain, especially relative to what we have been experiencing for the past year with Jupiter and Taurus. I also think Mercury ruling this Jupiter transit is going to be interesting, especially because Mercury isn't explicitly a malefic or benefic. Mercury's influence really depends on whatever other planet Mercury is interacting with. So honestly, thank God that we're getting this Jupiter in Gemini transit after that Mercury retrograde, Mars through Aries transit. I'm so glad. Because that would not have been very nice. But if Mercury is interacting with Saturn or Mars, the growth that Jupiter may bring may kind of be destructive. It's like you're given too many options, too many things, and it just kind of fries your brain. And that's also what I'm just worried about in general with Jupiter and Gemini, and especially for people with night charts, people with Sag or Pisces rising. There may be a sense of just like too much mental activity to the point where there's no chance to rest. There's no time for like mental recuperation. And also the square from Saturn, because Saturn is in Pisces right now, the square from Saturn is also going to kind of put a damper on things. Saturn is really going to call us to think about what's happening in the long term and try to be responsible while we are being given these opportunities. Saturn is like, yeah, but like, do you really think you're going to be able to manage that down the road? It was nicer when Jupiter was in Taurus because Jupiter was making a sextile to Saturn in Pisces, but now Jupiter is going to be making a square to Saturn in Pisces. So it's the adjustments that Saturn is calling us to make may feel a little bit uncomfortable, and it's going to be even more uncomfortable and the most uncomfortable when Mars is going into Gemini, and that's sometime Mars goes into Gemini in, I'm pretty sure, July. Yeah, it looks like July 20th, Mars will be in Gemini with Jupiter, and we'll be making that square to Saturn in Pisces. So that'll be uncomfortable, but it's okay. We'll deal with that when we get there. This transit will be really nice at the beginning because Venus is already in Gemini. Mercury is going to be moving into Gemini soon. So at the beginning of this transit, Jupiter will have the resources. Well, not right now, because the beginning of this transit started while Mercury was still in Taurus. So things may still feel a little slow. But once Mercury ingresses into Gemini on June 3rd, things are going to start getting very chaotic. There's also, do we have a Mercury Cazimi? I think there's a Mercury Cazimi. There's a Venus Cazimi in Gemini. So there's going to be a lot happening, and our Gemini houses and our birth charts are getting lit the fuck up for June. So again, pull out your birth chart, find the area of life where Gemini is for you. And that area of your life is a lot more opportunities for growth, for expansion, for wisdom finding, for truth finding, for guru connections, for all that stuff. I'm personally, as an Aries rising, I'm really excited because I'm ready to get back on here. All in all, this should be a very interesting time. It'll be really nice for the air signs out there. If you have Aquarius or Libra placements, this Jupiter and Gemini, or Gemini placements, this Jupiter transit will be exciting, to say the least. I'm really excited about it. My Time Lord is Mercury in Sag right now. I have Jupiter in Aquarius, so I'm very familiar with Jupiter and air sign energy, generally speaking. I'm really excited. Okay, I know I'm talking about I say that, it's Jupiter in detriment, yeah. But Jupiter is, at the end of the day, is still a benefic. So regardless, there's still going to be some good stuff that comes with it. Even though the goodness may not be like the best goodness, there's still going to be some goodness. So we should lean into that, and also just know that it's going to be very mentally stimulating. And if you find yourself being drained socially, mentally, all that stuff, you're getting way too much information, take a second to close down the social media apps. Take a second to not engage with other people and just kind of like decompress mentally. Really give yourself moments, especially for the night charts out there when Jupiter can just be kind of excess. Give yourself moments to kind of give yourself a brain break. you know, we all deserve a brain break. And also make sure you're not overdoing the hangouts. There may be a lot to stay on top of or to keep track of. So, you know, take your time the best way that you can. And now, since Mercury is still in Taurus, we really should just lean into taking our time. Because as I said, once Mercury goes into Gemini next week, it's going to start moving very quickly. So the speed is going to be really different. But yeah, so I'm really excited about this shift. I'm excited to see what unfolds. As I said, check the house of Gemini in your birth chart. That area could be experiencing more opportunity, more chances, more space for growth. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. And also, if you want a more personal look at what Jupiter and Gemini will look like for you, my books for birth chart readings and all my other offerings are open again. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know, but yes, I'm open for reading. So if you want to book a reading with me, please do so. I give people the opportunity to pay either pay for the reading in full or pay 50% down and then 50% after we meet. So, you know, whichever works for you. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very, very soon. Happy Jupiter in Gemini, and I'll see you guys elsewhere on the internet. Bye.